The Daniel Robinson case is stranger than you think. When Daniel's truck was found flipped in the desert, engines still running, clothes neatly folded nearby, everyone thought he'd wandered off in the heat. But weeks later, search teams uncovered his camera buried beneath the sand, and what it showed made no sense. In the footage, Daniel's face is sunburned, his voice trembling as he whispers about something following him. He says it moves when he stops and watches him at night. Then, the screen cuts to black. No one ever found his body. Just that strange pit near the canyon, lined with metal, like something had been there, waiting. And the detective who discovered it? She swears the night after, the radio whispered his name. No one goes near that ridge anymore. Some say the desert still remembers him, and whatever was watching. Before we go any further, if this is your first time here, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Your support means the world and helps us bring you even more powerful stories. Stick with us until the end, and if this mystery moves you, share your thoughts in the comments and pass it along to a friend. They say the desert has a sound, a long, quiet hum that hides under the wind. Elijah Monroe heard it for the first time 3 days before he disappeared. He was 27, a freelance geologist, not the kind that chases glory, just someone who liked being alone with the earth. He'd park his rust-red Jeep miles off any road, throw his equipment in a backpack, and walk into the heat until even his shadow looked tired. He called it listening to the land. Friends said he was brilliant, but odd. He didn't talk much unless it was about sediment layers, magnetic anomalies, or rock patterns. But lately, something had shifted. He'd been obsessed with a new site he called Black Ridge Basin, a stretch of desert no one ever charted properly because, as the locals put it, things don't stay still out there. On the morning he left, Elijah stopped by a small gas station just outside Ridgewell. There's footage, grainy, sun-faded, showing him filling up his Jeep, tapping his fingers on the pump handle like he was counting seconds. The clerk behind the counter later said he seemed distracted, mumbling to himself, maybe rehearsing something. He kept looking at the horizon, she said, like he was waiting for it to move. At 10:46 a.m., he sent a text to his friend. "The readings aren't natural. If I don't return, check the fault lines." No one replied. Not because they didn't care, but because that's how Elijah talked. Always cryptic. Always scientific. By the time his friends saw the message, Elijah was already gone. When the search team found his Jeep 3 days later, it was still running. The air conditioning was on full blast. The driver's door hung open, keys in the ignition, engine humming like a heart that didn't know its owner was missing. Inside, everything was neat. Notebook on the passenger seat, pen clipped to the page. But one thing didn't make sense. The airbag had deployed. No crash, no dent, no impact marks. Just the airbag, inflated, hanging limp and silent in the heat. There were no footprints leading away from the car. The sand around it looked smooth, untouched, as if the wind had wiped it clean seconds after he vanished. And yet his smartwatch, synced to his laptop back home, kept recording steps, over 6 hours of walking, deep into a part of the basin that GPS maps refused to load. People started talking. In Ridgewell, small towns always talk. 2 old mechanics at the diner joked that Elijah probably ran off chasing some underground energy thing. A waitress overheard and muttered, "Or maybe he found it." They laughed, but not for long. A few truckers claimed they'd seen strange lights flickering out near the ridge that same night, like someone waving a lantern beneath the sand. One said it looked like the earth was blinking. By the 4th day, the search turned serious. Dozens of volunteers walked the dunes, calling his name. Helicopters circled above, sending long shadows crawling over the land. But the desert gave nothing back. No signs, no struggle, no sound. That evening, Elijah's father stood by the empty Jeep, staring into the basin. The sun had dropped low, bleeding orange across the sky, and the whole place looked unreal, like it had been painted that way. He touched the hood, still warm. He whispered, "Where did you go, son?" Behind him, one of the search coordinators checked the GPS logs again, shaking his head. "His signal didn't stop," he muttered. "It just loops, over and over, like he's walking in circles." Someone joked quietly, "Maybe he found a way down." No one laughed that time. Back at the sheriff's office, they pinned Elijah's photo to the board. Bright eyes, unshaved beard, a smile that didn't quite hide the exhaustion. Under it, a printed map with red circles marking his last known coordinates. Each circle overlapped, forming a faint spiral. No one noticed that part yet. And in the quiet of the evidence room, Elijah's phone sat charging. Its wallpaper was a photo he took days before, a spiraling pattern of rocks on the desert floor, arranged so precisely that even the wind hadn't dared move them. The same spiral that would appear again and again, until people started wondering if the desert had been watching him too. When they finally got the drone footage off Elijah's cloud, everyone crowded around the smaller monitor like it held the answer. Funny how a screen can make a dozen people lean forward at once, necks creaking, breaths held. The video starts simple. Sun-bleached sand, a ridgeline, the Jeep, a tiny red dot. Then it lifts, higher and higher, until the basin opens up like a wound. And there, stitched into the flat, was a spiral. Not the messy kind the wind makes, but a deliberate, concentric spiral, carved with an almost surgical patience. It takes a second for your brain to accept what your eyes see. The spiral is too perfect. The curves are even, the center precise, like someone used a compass and a ruler and then sat back to admire it. Elijah's drone circles, zooms in, and for a moment you only hear the whir of the rotors and the soft static of the feed. Then the camera tilts, slow, and at the center of the spiral, a faint, pulsing light. Not a flare, not a reflection, but a steady blink, 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 as if it were breathing. Someone in the room whispers, "Huh." That one syllable carries a dozen guesses, doubts, fears. A volunteer mutters, "Maybe it's some kind of surveyor lamp." An older woman, who'd lived near Black Ridge her whole life, frowns and shakes her head. No surveyor would spend that kind of patience. That land doesn't like you spending patience there. You can hear the circular logic in her voice, the kind that builds from years of small truths. They fed the footage through the usual filters, enhanced contrast, frame by frame, spectral analysis. The pulsing light responded differently depending on the frequency. It stretched, it narrowed, like a throat opening and closing. And then somebody noticed something else. In the frames leading up to the light, the sand along one arc seemed darker, denser, like footsteps pressed and held. But when they replayed it at normal speed, the steps were gone. Gone, like a trick of heat. Elijah's GPS trail didn't help. Instead of ending at a point, it bent. It looped back, over itself, creating a faint spiral on the map that mirrored the sand. Investigators scratched their heads, tracing the path with fingers, phones, pens. One tech, a kid in a beanie who called everyone boss, said, "It's like the signal is being folded, like paper." You could almost see the metaphors snap into place. Paper, folds, mirrors. Local gossip thickened. You know how it goes. A seed of doubt, watered by hours in the diner. "That boy always did love the weird stuff," said the gas station clerk to a coworker, leaning on the counter, arms crossed. "Seen him last week? He bought 2 batteries, palms sweaty." The coworker shrugged. "Wassup with that? Scientist types? They get hyped." Another voice, lower, said, "Hyped or haunted, same thing out here." A park ranger, Jensen, back from a reconnaissance, brought his body cam to the office. He's the kind of man who folds himself into the land, patient, slow with words. He watched the drone footage on someone's laptop, thumb worrying at the strap of his watch. When I asked him if he saw the light in person, he touched his lip, then said, quietly, "It wasn't a light like a light. It felt," he searched for it, "like a timing, like something counting." His body cam, when they reviewed it, showed Elijah's Jeep as Jensen approached the basin a day later. The camera is shaky, sunlight bouncing off the hood, heat waves rippling the air. At the edge of the spiral, Jensen's flashlight catches something reflective, then nothing. There's a slow pull inward, Jensen's breath audible, heavy, then a hissing cigarette in the background, a whisper from someone off-screen. "Huh. Look at that." 2 voices, small, human. They step carefully, joking to hide nervousness. One says, "Heard the rocks sang." The other laughs, too loud. The laughter dies when the light flickers. The camera's audio picks up a faint low frequency, a hum under the hum of the generator. And the men step back, hands up, like they've been caught in someone else's prayer. Back in Ridgewell, social feeds did what they do best. They made noise. Clips from the drone looped, sped up, slowed down. Conspiracy channels put up arrows, slow pans, dramatic captions. Elijah Monroe found? OR lost. Comment threads swelled with theories. Cults, sinkholes, government tests. Someone even posted a screenshot highlighting a tiny dark speck near the spiral center, calling it the mirror. Elijah's brother scrolled through those posts at night, jaw clenched, phone light painting his face. He messaged a friend, "Don't look at that stuff." But of course he did. Of course he looked, eyes hungry for any thread that might lead him back. Scientists were brought in, reluctantly. A geophysicist from the university came out 2 days later, hair windblown, not a believer in omens. She walked the perimeter, knelt, ran a magnetometer slowly over the sand, felt for anything that broke pattern. She kept her voice clipped, professional. "Magnetic anomalies are common in certain strata," she told the sheriff. "But this," she tapped the device and frowned, "this repeats symmetric readings. 2 identical signatures right on top of each other. It's as if they're mirroring. A word like glass, like reflection, like something you can stare into and lose your place." She ran labs on the collected sand. Nothing chemical, nothing radioactive. The samples were ordinary. It was the pattern, the geometry, that refused to behave under logic. "You can model heat distortion, but not a perfect spiral," she admitted, in the hush of a taped interview. "Not like this." Day turned to night, and then night to more day, and the basin gave nothing but questions. People began to report small, impossible things. A compass that spun for no reason. Radios that made a soft, layered noise like a chorus wearing gloves. Watches that stuttered, then lost time. A teenager from Ridgewell, daring himself, drove to the edge of the property and swore he saw a figure inside the spiral, standing very still. He told his buddy, who told his cousin, who told everyone at the barber shop. It became truth by repetition. At the barber shop, scissors tapping, someone whispered, "He looked like himself, that boy." No, man, not himself, like a shadow of him. The barber snipped, and the room settled, the gossip folding into the ordinary rhythm of the town. Through it all, Elijah's notebook sat on the evidence table, pages held by a paperweight. His handwriting was tidy, lines scored by the pressure of the pen. In the margins, numbers that looked like coordinates. On one page, a scribbled phrase, not just below. Beside. It's a small sentence, but it opened up a wider doubt. Not beneath the earth, but beside it, overlapping, parallel, like 2 thin sheets pressed together. That image lodged in the minds of people who read it, stubborn as a splinter, and the spiral, from the drone's cold lens, pulsed again in the quiet hours when the town slept. Someone whispered, wandering by the command center late, "It's echoing him, isn't it?" Others didn't answer. They didn't need to. The idea of an echo that could rearrange the map, fold a person into a pattern, that was the new fear they shared, passing like cigarettes between their fingers, watching the feed, waiting for a sign. The light in the video blinked another time, slow, deliberate. Outside, the wind picked up, and the sand began to bite at the edges of footprints, smoothing the world into unreadable lines. And for the first time, the word that had hovered in the room, mirroring, stopped being abstract. It folded into the search logs, the lab results, the hushed bar conversations. It became the angle they had to face. By the 3rd week, the search turned quiet, not because they gave up, but because the land had stopped pretending to give answers. The helicopters left first, the pilots saying the same thing. The compass keeps twitching off course. It's not safe to fly low anymore. So it was just the investigators, a few locals, and the dry breath of the desert that refused to rest. Elijah's name became more of a pattern than a person. Each morning the sheriff checked the coordinates again, eyes red from sleepless nights, muttering the same thing. "We're missing something small." But no one knew that the small thing would come on its own. One Tuesday night while Ridgewell slept, Elijah's old laptop, the one sitting in his apartment covered in dust, pinged. A new audio file uploaded to his cloud account at 2:14 a.m. The device it came from? His satellite phone, the same phone that went offline the day he vanished. The file name was just one word, below. They opened it the next morning. At first, there was only the sound of wind, long and steady, then a shift, footsteps crunching against sand. And Elijah's voice, It's moving beneath me. The ground hums, like it's breathing. He sounds calm at first, explaining to himself, like a scientist recording notes. It vibrates at intervals, 6.3 meters apart, repeating. Then his breathing changes. Quicker. Uneven. If anyone finds this, a pause. Don't dig. Don't. Then silence. Not the clean kind, but the kind that has something inside it. When the tech analysts boosted the audio, a low tone appeared under the wind, faint, rhythmic. It wasn't static. It was voices, dozens of them, whispering. When slowed down, the whispers formed coordinates. Not any known location, numbers that didn't exist on modern maps, but when plotted manually, they formed a perfect spiral, the same shape from the drone footage, the same shape carved into the earth. Rumors bloomed like wildfire. Ridgewell's diner filled with strangers again, journalists, YouTubers, the kind of people who wear backpacks full of cameras and say things like energy anomaly. Two old men sitting by the window kept watch. One sipped his coffee, muttered, "They ain't here for the boy. They're here for the story." The other nodded. "Well, the story's what took him." Outside, someone scrawled "The Mirror Line" on the back of a stop sign in chalk. By sunset, it was already half gone, washed by sand. Elijah's father, Michael Monroe, came back to Ridgewell that week. He'd been quiet through everything, but when he heard the recording, his face hardened. Not shock, just a dull human ache. He replayed it again and again, his thumb trembling slightly as he held the phone speaker to his ear. When he finally spoke, his voice broke on the word breathing. "I used to take him camping," he whispered. He'd put his ear on the ground and say he could hear the planet move. Said it sounded alive. He paused, blinking hard. Guess maybe he was right. The investigation pivoted. They sent the recording to acoustic labs, to geophysicists, even to a sound engineer who worked on earthquakes. One woman in the lab said the low tones didn't match human speech at all. "They're subharmonics," she said, frowning at the spectrogram, like overlapping frequencies repeating the same phrase in layers. When the sheriff asked her what phrase, she leaned closer to the screen. It took her a moment to answer. "They're saying his name." Meanwhile, in the field, strange things started happening to the search team. Cameras drained battery faster than usual. GPS units lost signal and rebooted with new coordinates that led nowhere. At one point, a volunteer named Drew swore he saw someone walking behind him. Same jacket Elijah wore, same backpack. But when he turned, the figure dissolved in the heat waves. The geophysicist returned, this time with new equipment. She took fresh readings across the spiral's edge and noticed something odd. The instruments picked up two identical magnetic fields overlapping each other, like the Earth's pulse had been copied and pasted. "You can't have two identical readings in one place," she said softly. "That's duplication." That night, while the sheriff's team reviewed the data, Elijah's voice memo played in the background again, looping. Somewhere in the middle, a second voice bled through for just half a second. A breath, a whisper. Not loud, but clear enough to hear one word. Crossed. No one knew what it meant. Some thought Elijah crossed into an unstable fault zone, maybe fell through an underground cavity. Others thought he meant something deeper, that he'd crossed into a mirrored version of the same world, right beside theirs. The whispers didn't stop there. Two hikers passing near the basin late one evening claimed they heard someone calling from the ridge, same tone, same cadence. "Help me," they said it sounded like. But the voice didn't echo. It repeated. Once, twice, and then answered itself. Back in town, even the skeptical locals stopped laughing. They'd lower their voices when the wind passed through, muttering, "The basin remembers." Some refused to drive near it at night, saying the headlights flickered when you looked straight ahead, like the light itself wanted to blink. Then came one final upload. This one wasn't audio. It was a fragment of video, just 3 seconds long. Elijah's face, close to the lens, eyes wide, sand whipping around him. He's whispering, but the sound is drowned by a deep, resonant hum. For one frame, barely a blink, there's a reflection behind him. Another Elijah. Same face, same motion, a half-second delay, then static. The file cut abruptly, leaving a single corrupted frame, an image of the desert floor where the spiral faintly glows in the dark. Analysts couldn't explain it. The file shouldn't have transmitted. The satellite phone battery had been dead for weeks, but the timestamp matched exactly the same minute the whispering stopped. In Ridgewell, someone pinned a printout of the video frame to the diner wall beside Elijah's missing poster. No caption, no explanation. Just the two mirrored faces frozen in sand and light, and written in pen, underneath the image, 3 words. He found below. The sun was already dipping when the search team reached the rocky ridge north of the crash site. The light was softer now, turning everything gold and red. Long shadows stretched across the sand like dark fingers. The air had cooled, but the silence still carried weight, that kind of silence that presses against your eardrums, making you aware of your own breathing. Detective Sandra Ruiz crouched beside the truck. She pressed her fingers against the warm metal, still humming from the sun. The scent of burnt rubber hung faintly in the air. She looked toward the horizon, where the mountains faded into a pale blur. No footprints. No drag marks. Just wind-swept emptiness. "Doesn't make sense," one of the deputies muttered. "If he walked away, where'd he go?" "There's nothing out here for miles." Sandra didn't answer. She brushed away some sand near the truck's door. Something glittered faintly. A bracelet, half buried, the kind you'd expect to see on a woman's wrist. She slipped it into an evidence bag. No one said anything, but the air grew heavier. That evening, at the makeshift search camp, the glow of flashlights scattered across the ground. Volunteers huddled near coolers, drinking warm water, murmuring theories in low tones. "You heard what they said, right?" one man whispered to another. "That he left messages before disappearing. Talking about feeling watched." "Yeah, but that's the desert, man. You stare at the sun too long. You start hearing voices." The two chuckled, but it wasn't a laugh of comfort. More like one that hides unease. Somewhere nearby, a radio crackled, then died again. Static. Then silence. By the third night, the desert began to play tricks on them. One of the search drones sent back footage of something odd. A faint shape, distant, barely visible, standing motionless between 2 saguaro cacti. Too tall to be Daniel. Too still to be human. The operator paused the video. Everyone leaned closer to the screen, their faces lit by the blue glow. "What is that?" someone whispered. Sandra zoomed in, pixel by pixel, until the shape lost its meaning, just light and shadow, grain and distortion. But for a brief moment, it had almost looked like a figure facing the camera. That night, Sandra sat outside her tent, staring into the darkness. Wind whispered through the rocks, carrying dry sand that hissed like rain. Her phone buzzed. A message from Daniel's father. "He's out there somewhere. I can feel it. The desert keeps secrets, Detective." She looked at the message for a long time. Then she typed back, "We won't stop looking." But even as she sent it, her gut twisted. Because she knew the desert didn't keep secrets. It consumed them. The next morning, something shifted. Miles from the original site, a hiker radioed in, said he found something near a dry ravine. When the team arrived, they found a pile of Daniel's clothes, folded neatly on a rock, his jeans, his boots, his shirt, his wallet tucked beside them. No signs of struggle, no footprints leading away, just order in the middle of chaos. The sight unsettled everyone. "Maybe one volunteer began, but his voice trailed off. No one wanted to say it aloud. The desert was quiet again, except for the wind, whispering across the dunes like breath over bone. That night, when Sandra returned to camp, she stood by the truck again. The stars above were sharp and endless. She whispered softly to herself, "Where did you go, Daniel?" From somewhere behind her, one of the deputies called out, "Detective? You should see this." He held up a printout from the latest drone scan. A faint heat signature captured miles east. Alone, moving slowly in the dark. Sandra's eyes narrowed. Could be him. But when the drone returned at dawn, the shape was gone. Vanished. No footprints. No body. No explanation. Only that same eerie stillness, as if the desert itself was holding its breath. And as the sun rose once more, painting the sand in gold and fire, Sandra stood over the empty truck, her hand resting on the doorframe. For the first time since she'd arrived, she felt something strange in her chest. Not fear, not confusion, something closer to belief that, whatever happened out here, it wasn't over. Not even close. The morning came quietly, with a pale sun rising over the horizon like a shy secret. The desert was still, eerily still. No birds, no wind, just that vast silence pressing down on everything. Detective Sandra Ruiz sat in the driver's seat of her SUV, eyes heavy from a sleepless night. The coffee in her cup had gone cold, untouched. She scrolled through the drone footage again, frame by frame. Each flicker of movement, each grain of distortion felt like a clue. But it all led nowhere. She sighed and muttered under her breath, "What are you trying to tell us, Daniel?" Then she paused. A reflection caught her eye, just a faint shimmer in the footage, near the rocks where Daniel's truck was found. She zoomed in. There, buried under brush and sand, was something metallic. An hour later, the team was digging under the ridge. Sweat glistened on their foreheads. The sun was unforgiving again, burning through their hats and patience. Then, one of them called out, "Got something!" Sandra pushed through the dust. There, half buried, was a weathered camera, cracked, but still recognizable. A GoPro. It took nearly an hour to coax its memory card back to life. The screen flickered. And then, there he was, Daniel, standing in front of the camera, his face tight with exhaustion, his eyes red from sun and sand. His voice was shaky but calm. "If you're watching this, I don't know if I'm still here." The wind howled behind him in the video. He looked over his shoulder, toward something unseen. "I thought I saw someone or something out there. It's not a mirage. It moves when I stop. It watches me at night." He took a breath, voice trembling. "I found something buried near the canyon. It wasn't an animal. It looked." The video cut out with a sharp crack of static. Then another clip loaded. Daniel's face again, now smeared with dirt and panic. They said the desert was empty, but it's not. The screen went black. No one spoke for a long time. The wind had picked up again, scattering sand across their boots. Sandra replayed the footage, over and over. Each time, her gut twisted tighter. "What the hell did he mean?" a deputy asked quietly. Sandra didn't answer, but she noticed something strange. Behind Daniel, in the few clear frames, there was a faint shadow near the rocks. A tall, distorted outline that didn't belong. Later that evening, the team returned to the spot from the video. The sky was dimming, streaked with fading light. They moved slowly, following Daniel's last known direction. The landscape began to change. The sand thinning into jagged stone, the air cooler, heavier. Then, just beyond a narrow bend, they found it. A shallow depression in the ground. Circular, lined with metal fragments half buried in dust. Something had been here, something big. Sandra knelt down, brushing her hand across the debris. It wasn't a campsite. It wasn't a vehicle. It looked constructed. She whispered to herself, "What were you chasing, Daniel?" Behind her, one of the volunteers murmured to another, thinking she couldn't hear, "Man, maybe he found something he shouldn't have. People go missing out here all the time. But this feels wrong." The other one laughed nervously. Or maybe he lost it. Sun fried his brain, but even he didn't sound convinced. That night, Sandra sat alone by the ridge, the desert stretching endlessly in front of her. She replayed Daniel's last words in her head. "It moves when I stop. It watches me at night." She looked up at the horizon. The moon hung low, pale and cold. In the distance, she thought she saw movement. Just a flicker, a shadow sliding across the dunes. But when she blinked, it was gone. The wind rose suddenly, whispering through the rocks like a voice just beyond hearing. Her radio crackled, then fizzled. For a moment, she thought she heard something faint, static. Then a single word, distorted and low. "Run!" She froze. Her pulse hammered. But when she checked the channel, nothing. Just silence. The next morning, the search was called off. Officially, Daniel Robinson was still missing. Unofficially, everyone left with more questions than answers. The truck, the folded clothes, the recordings. It all hinted at something that didn't fit any explanation. Sandra filed her report, her fingers trembling as she typed the final line. Case remains unsolved. Evidence inconclusive. Subject possibly deceased. But as she looked out at the desert one last time, she felt it again, that subtle, unshakable sense that she wasn't alone. Somewhere out there, under that endless expanse of dust and stone, something was watching. And long after she'd driven away, the wind swept over Daniel's last footprints, erasing them grain by grain, until there was no trace left, no path, no proof, only the whisper of the desert carrying his name. So what do you think really happened to Daniel Robinson? Did he stumble onto something no one was meant to find, or did the desert itself take him? Let me know what you believe in the comments, and if you want more true mystery stories like this one, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell. Because some cases only get stranger the deeper you look.